with the 49ers, they were pretty good in 2023 behind Brock Purdy's strong first full season as a starting quarterback. And he shocked the world in this couple of games in 2022, but 2023 was something else. He helped the 49ers surge to the NFC's top seed, and in the playoffs, he helped them overcome two tough playoff opponents in the Packers and the Lions to advance to Super Bowl 58. Unfortunately, they just couldn't finish the story. He played pretty good in that game, but the rest of the team, I don't know. Especially Kyle Shanahan, man. Those memories. Unfortunately, they once again fell to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in a Super Bowl 54 rematch in overtime. In a heartbreaker I'd rather not talk about, key mistakes led to their downfall. Coaching decisions led to their downfall. But nonetheless, here we are, once again, trying to figure out how they're going to finish the story. How are they going to do the Cody Rhodes? How are they going to do the Liv Morgan of 20? How are they able to finish their story, but not my 49ers? That would have been, this already would have been the perfect year, man. But now, they just had to fuck it up. Like Kyle Shanahan just had to fuck it up. Like, so many bad things went our way in that Super Bowl, but I don't want to relive it. But anyway, we're on to a new season for the 49ers, and they made some changes. To try and hopefully right the wrong going into this upcoming season. So they fired Steve Wilkes, who I feel like they made him a scapegoat, but he was already having some issues in this past season with his scheme. I guess the players weren't really liking to Steve Wilkes. So they replaced him with Nick Sorensen, an internal hire, as defensive coordinator. But then for some other reason, they hired former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley. Yeah, let's hire the guy that clippered the organization for the last 2 years, and pretty much gave them their worst beatdown in 2023 against the Raiders of all teams. The Raiders, who also had an interim head coach, like on Amazon Prime Video, Brandon Staley got his ass whooped by an interim head coach by like 50 points on Amazon Prime Video. Yeah, let's hire Brandon Staley as a assistant head coach / defensive assistant. But I mean, maybe he'll lead something. Maybe he'll hopefully teach Kyle Shanahan to not to choke. Hopefully, but maybe it'll be something positive. I don't know. But some other changes that they made, they decided to release defensive tackle Eric Armstead to get some salary cap money, and I feel like it was time to move on from Eric Armstead. Now, as sometimes productive as he was, he just couldn't stay healthy at times. So I felt like it was time to move on from him. But they also re-signed receiver Juwan Jennings, who was very key in trying to win that Super Bowl, because my God, I don't know where everyone else was. I don't know where the rest of the team was with Debo, Kittle in that game. But Juwan Jennings stepped up to the plate in that Super Bowl. And they also re-signed guard John Feliciano, who was a solid piece for that offensive line, which kind of struggled a bit. So obviously, the number one goal for this team in 2024 is you got to make it back to the Super Bowl. There's no if, ands, or buts. And we'll talk about it later, with, all these hypotheticals. But damn it, you got to make it back to the Super Bowl, and you got to finish the damn story. And this was the perfect year. Like I said, this was the perfect year to do it. Everything was set up perfectly. Super Bowl or bust. You could have finished the story like Cody Rhodes did, like Liv Morgan did. But no. Kyle Shanahan, the ultimate fuck up the century. The NFL setting things up because, we wanted to have Taylor Swift suck that, with Travis Kelce and Roger Goodell and Patrick Mahomes. I want to suck that Lombardi, you know what. But anyway, I don't want to dive too much in that anymore. So anyway, just make it back to the Super Bowl and finish the damn story, please. Anyway, some of the things that I was hoping the 49ers addressed in the offseason was committing to the fixing the offensive line, because the offensive line has been a serious issue for this team ever since whether it was Trey Lance, whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it was Brock Purdy in these last couple of years, horrific blocking from this offensive line, especially in the interior. Like what the frick? No, not the interior. The right side of the offensive line, bad, really bad. And then, of course, the big topic of discussion, and probably still is at the time of this recording, maybe it still isn't, Brandon Ayuk. Extending Brandon Ayuk to a long-term deal. And again, I'm not sure if it's already done by now, but hopefully it is. So some of the moves that they made this past offseason, they didn't really lose a whole lot, which is always a good thing. They lost Chase Young and Randy Gregory to other teams, but I mean, they didn't really move the needle as the season wore on. One kind of sad move was Javon Kinlaw to the Jets. It was kind of disappointing how he didn't pan out. Of a former first-round pick, but I felt like in 2023, he's starting to show a little bit of flashes, but unfortunately, I'm not sure what happened, but kind of sad. So they made bigger moves. They made bigger moves in free agency with who they added, like Leonard Floyd from the Bills and Yetur Gross-Matos from the Panthers. So that edge rushing duo opposite Nick Bosa should hopefully help out. Hopefully Nick Bosa has some little bit less pressure on himself. Internally with the defensive line, you have Jordan Elliott from the Browns, Malik Collins they traded for from the Texans. So hopefully those will be the replacements for Eric Armstead, and hopefully some help for Javon Hargrave. And then you get a corner from Isaac Yiadom from the Saints. And then looking at their draft, I was screaming to the clouds, get an offensive lineman, get a right tackle. But no, they get a receiver by the name of Ricky Pearsall from Florida. Now, I was kind of upset. I was really upset that they didn't get an offensive lineman. But I guess there's nobody left. There's nobody left to get. But I'm just glad that they did finally address the offensive line in the third round of the draft. And he looks all right. He looks pretty good. And so far, from what I'm hearing in these mini camps, he's performing pretty good. So hopefully that turns out to be a point. And he can play all positions. He can play guard, he can play center, he can play tackle. So he has some flexibility within the offensive line, which is always a good thing. They also got another corner by the name of Renardo Green from Florida State. So overall, when you're looking at for my 49ers, they potentially upgraded their defensive line and got Nick Bosa some much needed help, because that defensive front has had talent for the last few years, yet it underperformed when you get to these big moments. From the looks of things, though, that may change with the addition of Jordan Elliott, Yetur Gross-Matos, and especially Leonard Floyd to help out Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave, because they've had so much pressure put on them this past year, but they can seriously use the help. And then don't forget the young players like Drake Jackson, who I thought was going to be a serious presence, but I guess the injury, he just couldn't stay healthy this past season. And then Robert Beal, who I hope can turn out into something. So hopefully they can pan out as we get into training camp. And then same within the defense. That cornerback room is the most crowded that I've ever seen in the Kyle Shanahan tenure. And that's a good thing, because the biggest weakness for this 49ers team has been the back half of that secondary, because especially when you look at the passing defense behind Javarius Ward and Diamador Lenore. So adding Yiadom, Rock Ya-Sin, and Renardo Green, the likes of them, and then I'm hoping that Darrell Luter Jr. comes along in year 2. So it's going to be a competition between all those four, but hopefully they have some serious depth behind Ward and Lenore come week 1. So hopefully that cornerback room is really beefed up and really good as the season progresses. So looking at some of their key games going into hopefully their year. Week 1 against the New York Jets. So playing Aaron Rodgers on a Monday night. Yeah, what a way to pump up our blood pressure already. And then 2 weeks later, you go to LA on the back half of a road trip to play the LA Rams. Levi South. But that should be an interesting game. And then a couple weeks later, the Super Bowl rematch against the Kansas City Chiefs. How are you gonna respond to that one? And I know it's only the regular season, but who knows? I'm actually not gonna get into that. Whether it's gonna be that or that. And then a week later, you play the Dallas Cowboys before your bye week. I mean, it's the Cowboys, but, you never know. So, obviously, my biggest questions for my 49ers going into 2024 is, are they going to get this extension done with Brandon Ayuk? I know, things have been progressing some, but I just want this deal to get done already. And if it has been by now, great. I'm just glad they got that cloud lifted off. But they just need it. I'm just tired of another offseason where it's like contract drama this, contract drama that. Oh, well, Debo gets signed. Well, Nick Bosa gets signed. Well, Fred Warner gets signed. Or now it's Brandon Ayuk. And then next year will be Brock Purdy. It's like, God damn. Oh, speaking of Brock Purdy, how will he perform this season now that he had a full offseason under his belt? I just hope that now that he's had a full offseason under his wing, he's going to be a lot better, because he didn't have that benefit last year. But hopefully, going into this year, he's going to look a lot better and exceed expectations again. So for the 49ers, on paper, they remain one of the best teams in the NFL, and they could be better since they didn't really lose anyone of value in free agency, and they finally have a crowded cornerback room. The offensive line looks okay, a little bit, very slightly better, but not much. But now Brock Purdy underwent his full offseason, and he's done OTAs, he's done mini camps, and now he's going to do a full training camp, which is very good. That being said, though, they're still coming off not just their second Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs in 5 years, but one of the most heartbreaking ones in over a decade. They've been here before in 2020, and they were rewarded with injury mania running wild, pal, in that pandemic 6-10 season in 2020. And they better not fall victim. They better not fall victim to the dreaded Super Bowl losers curse again. I do not want to see that again. Everything came crashing down in week 2, and then just came down and down and down with those injuries. We better not have that again in 2024. So they need to get past that loser's curse. And this feels like a last dance type of season, because you have players like Ayuk, Debo, Greenlaw, and others on the last year of their contracts, or some of them might also be contract extension eligible, like Trent Williams, and especially Brock Purdy, heading into those negotiating extensions after this coming season. So if Kyle Shanahan and company don't finish their story like they should have back in February, then I expect serious changes to come after 2024, because I don't know, for as calm, as collective as Jed York has become nowadays, I don't know if he's willing to be as calm as collective with, not failing to once again finish the story once again in 2024. You better get it done. You better get it done, Kyle. I swear.